Good morning. Happy 2017. We made it. Or did we? We don't know. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. We're a liberal religious congregation striving to be a community where love works. My name is Hillary Collins Gilpatrick. I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education here, and it's with joy that I say, whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, whether you stayed up long past midnight last night ringing in the new year, or whether you kept to your usual 8:30 p.m. bedtime, you're welcome here. If you're new to Cedar Lane, we have a gift for you. How cool is that? Just raise your hand and keep it raised, and one of our welcomers will come round to greet you. Thanks for coming by today. It's nice to have you here. Raise them high, raise them high, yeah. All are invited to enjoy coffee and conversation after the service this morning. If you choose to use a yellow mug, our members will be sure to say hi. Before we move to our worship, I encourage you to check out the news insert in your order of celebration, where information about many upcoming events is listed. I have a few announcements before we begin our service. At 11:30 this morning, Reverend Jenna Munchie will be leading a UU 101 class in the library. UU 101 is for those who'd like to learn more about UU history and how this history guides our faith. No matter how long you've been with us, you're welcome to enjoy this class and develop friendships with others at Cedar Lane. Have you ever wanted to learn how to do a sit-in or march in the street in a way that enables you to get around obstacles? Or protest a cause in a creative way? Join us for a nonviolent, direct action training from 1 to 5 in the sanctuary on January 7th. This training will be led by Tracy Redd of the Black Youth Project 100 and co-sponsored by Showing Up for Racial Justice, Montgomery County. Register soon. This event is filling up very quickly. Please join the Cedar Lane Board of Trustees for a special congregational meeting on January 8th at 12:30. During this time, we'll vote on bylaws, changes, and discuss 2017 priorities. More details on this meeting can be read in your insert. And join us for an important all-congregation social justice summit on January 14th from 9 to 4. Reverend Rob Keithan, Director of Social Justice at All Souls, will facilitate a productive conversation on how we as a religious community can advance our vision of justice and equality in the year ahead. Please RSVP in advance. I now invite Kathleen Reedy to announce this morning's Share the Plate offering.
Good morning. Good morning. My words are from Tom Andrews, paraphrased from Tom Andrews, the new president of the UUSC. Hate prevailed in 2016 in ways that few ever thought possible. Xenophobia, fear, racism, and misogyny were systematically tapped as powerful, hate-fueled political weapons. Everything that we believe in and care about is at risk. Now, more than ever, we need to organize and act. Not a few of us, but all of us. The Unitarian Universalist Service Committee formed after World War II to help those in places of the world where people are at risk, first in Europe, then in third world countries in Africa. I've shown the film of its origin here at Cedar Lane twice, and Ken Burns has crafted it for PBS, The Sharps War. But now, UUSC is laying the groundwork for a national campaign to stand up to hate and hold accountable those political leaders who fuel it, as well as those who support their views. We're exploring campaigns to create hate-free schools and hate-free cities. Also, UUSC is laying the foundation for a national effort to stand with those who are facing immediate deportation. These families risked everything to come to the United States, not for a better job, but because the alternative was incredible violence at the hands of gangs and death squads in their country. They need our compassion, support, and protection, not harassment, incarceration, and deportation. However, UUSC's original mission, support for those on other continents, continues to reach out to our partners around the world who are also at risk. Hate, fear, and xenophobia are present not just here, but in many places of the world. Especially now, we stand with the most marginalized and forgotten at their time of greatest need. The work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee has never been more important. Please, as we share the plate with UUSC today, consider making a generous, fully tax-deductible contribution to the UUSC and join in this effort. The stakes have never been higher. The need for you and your support has never been greater.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And so here we are this morning, together in this sanctuary, this sacred space, on the first morning of the first day of a new year. All right. Let's take a moment now to turn and greet our neighbors on this new day.
I forgot them. There's one.
We have two. I think we can share.
There we go. Okay. That's taken care of.
And coming back. Let's take a deep breath and take it all in. And take another deep breath and sigh it all out. And let's now come into our time of worship with a musical piece.
When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to release the hungry, to release the prisoner, to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the people, to bring music in the heart
We bid you welcome on this first day of the new year.
Like Janus, we gather with part of us looking backward and part of us looking forward.
We gather on the edge of this new year, saddened by our losses, cherishing our joys, aware of our failures, and mindful of days gone by.
We gather on the cusp of this new year, eager to begin anew, hopeful for what lies ahead, committing to make changes, anticipating tomorrows and tomorrows.
We invite you to join our celebration of life, knowing that life includes good and bad, failures and accomplishments, endings and beginnings.
We bid you welcome. As Todd and Lisa Chernikoff come forward to kindle the chalice, please rise in body and/or in spirit to share in unison the words printed in your order of celebration. To face the world's shadows, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a chalice of courage. To face the world's despair, a chalice of hope. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirit, our hearts, and our lives. Please remain as you are to sing For All the Saints, hymn number 103 in the gray hymnal. Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect on our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual caring and support of our community. In this time of mindfulness and caring, we continue to hold in our hearts all those whose lives are lost and whose loved ones' lives are lost to violence and calamities in our world. Today, we especially hold those in our hearts in Istanbul, where 39 people died from a shooting. We offer healing thoughts and prayers to Jeanette McCarthy and family on the death of her husband, Al McCarthy, a longtime member who died on December 27th. We honor the life and work and humor of Carrie Fisher and her mother, Debbie Reynolds. May these friends of ours and our companions in the world and all that lives unspoken in our hearts be held in the embrace of our community.
Please join me in a prayerful mindset. God, just as a single word can never name exactly what and how you are, the words we offer in prayer cannot name all that we have felt and seen this year, this week, this morning. But still we offer these words, our joys and sorrows, to this community, to the beloved friends and families who weigh or flutter on our minds, to the sky above us and to the ground below us. And we connect with you, God, in ways beyond our understanding, but in ways we trust exist when we sense connections with others, with the air we breathe, and with the light and darkness that shapes our lives. And so, to love and all that is good in the world, we offer prayers of healing to the sick, to the sad, to the homeless, and to the desperate. To justice and the anger that flows directly from our hearts, we offer prayers of healing to the oppressed, the murdered, the displaced, and the abused. To peace and all the beauty that falls into place in its making, we offer prayers of healing to all, those behind us, those before us, those beside us, and ourselves. Make us instruments of love, of justice, of peace, O unknowable God. Set this as our course for the new year ahead. Help us begin this path today, right now. Please, please let it be so. Amen. Please join me now in a time of silence. And during this time, those grieving a loss or commemorating an anniversary are invited to stand in mourning or memory.
Our reading this morning is excerpted from an essay by the Reverend Meg Riley, Senior Minister of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, titled Prophetic UU Congregations in the 21st Century. She writes, "What relevance could the ancient word prophetic still hold for Unitarian Universalists? The term mostly bewilders us, conjuring images of wild-eyed, ranting men with white beards, holding signs proclaiming the end is near, foretelling apocalyptic vengeance courtesy of God the Father. Certainly, Unitarian Universalism has grown past that image. Many UUs would abandon the idea of the prophetic entirely. I have heard Unitarian Universalists speak instead of congregations that are bold, or visionary, or relevant, or vital, or justice-seeking. I like all these words, but I like prophetic more because of its relationship to time and possibility. It draws from a place deep in our past and casts our vision around the corner into an unknown future. The word is useful when it transcends doom and gloom, the end is near proclamations, and instead declares the beginning is near. It is useful when it calls us to create something new, even now. This is the prophetic in the sense used by 20th century Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams, who called on us to take responsibility to see the consequences of our behavior with the intention of making history rather than being pushed around by it. That concludes the reading for this morning.
Well, I'm gonna get through this world the best I can, if I can. And I'm gonna get through this world, and I think I can. And I think I can. Well, I'm gonna work in this world the best I can, if I can. And I'm gonna work in this world, and I think I can. And I think I can. I'm gonna get through this world the best I can, if I can. I'm gonna work in this world the best I can, if I can. I'm gonna get through this world the best I can. Well, I'm gonna walk in this world the best I can, if I can. And I'm gonna walk in this world, and I think I can. And I think I can. I am gonna talk in this world the best I can, if I can. And I'm gonna talk in this world, and I think I can. And I think I can. I'm gonna walk in this world the best I can, if I can. I'm gonna talk in this world the best I can, if I can. I'm gonna get through this world the best I can. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Well, I'm gonna clean up this world the best I can, if I can. And I'm gonna clean up this world, and I think I can. And I think I can. Well, I'm gonna leave this world behind the best I can, if I can. And I'm gonna leave this world behind, and I think I can, and I think I can. I'm gonna clean up this world the best I can, if I can. I'm gonna leave this world behind the best I can, if I can. I'm gonna get through this world the best I can. Die, 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 die. Da 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 da. Your turn. Die 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 die. You get another chance. Die 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 die
Thank you, Henry, Susanna, for that wonderful song. Wow. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. Because tonight's the eighth night. The Soul Matters theme for January is prophecy, which Merriam-Webster defines as a prediction of something to come, the inspired declaration of will and purpose, or the inspired utterance of a prophet. Now, given that the themes for the 2016-17 church year, the Soul Matters themes, were picked by the coordinators of the program last spring, one could say that these folks were being somewhat prophetic in picking this as the theme for January. So I was initially tempted to call my reflections "The End is Near," and use this opportunity on the first Sunday of this new year to subject you to a Unitarian Universalist version of the impending apocalypse that many people fear will unfold in the next 4 years. But in the end, sanity prevailed, and I chose to follow my wise colleague, the Reverend Mike Riley's lead, and titled them, "The Beginning is Near." So the question that we are invited to reflect on and engage with is, what does it mean to be a religious community of prophecy, or to be a prophetic congregation? Now, before I address that question, allow me to dwell on the word prophet for a bit. The word is derived from the Greek prophetis, meaning spokesperson. The Hebrew word for prophet is navi. In Arabic, it is nabi. Now, navi is derived from the term niv sefa taim, which means fruit of the lips. And navi emphasizes the role of the prophet as a speaker, as one who calls the community out or the community in to change in response to a higher law, a greater good. And when one heeds the speech and witness of the prophet, one will be blessed. And when they don't, they will be cursed. Now, for those who were brought up Jewish or Christian, the word prophet does conjure some vivid images, and you may be reminded of those fiery Hebrew prophets of the old, like Amos or Isaiah or Nathan or Jeremiah, long-haired and wild-eyed, breathlessly impatient about injustice, foretelling the future in sometimes vague and ambiguous terms, passionately proclaiming doom and gloom upon Israel and its people for not living up to God's expectations. But whatever the message of the Hebrew prophets, they clearly put themselves forth as spokespersons for God. In fact, their words were usually attributed directly to God. As such, their voices of judgment and criticism of the standing order took on a level of authority that allowed them to stand up to the powers and principalities of their day. Appealing directly to the people, they often directed criticism toward the rulers and religious leaders and structures of the time. Now, they were more focused on the behavior of systems and structures rather than the individuals. As the Hebrew Bible scholar R.B.Y. Scott points out, and I quote, "The evils condemned are not of a personal nature, they are the characteristic of society as such, permeating its political structure, its economic activities, its culture, its accepted morality, and profoundly affecting its religion. The great prophets, without exception, were tremendously concerned with social conditions and public issues as marking a spiritual as well as a temporal crisis." End of quote. So prophets are individuals who critique society, condemning its habits and assumptions, its complacency, waywardness, materialism, greed, and exclusivism. They offer evidence of misbehavior and social vice, describe the likely consequences if the situation remains uncorrected, and push for a change of behavior and or policy that will reverse the damage that has been caused. They read the writing on the wall way better than most of us. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we don't limit ourselves just to the Holy Scriptures in our quest for religious and moral inspiration and edification. In our tradition, we believe that revelation is not sealed. In fact, it is not sealable. That revelation is continuous and evolving, and that we continue to receive inspiration from various sources that not only guide but challenge us to live lives of honesty, integrity, and service. So just as we honor the likes of an Amos or Moses or Jesus or the prophet Muhammad or Lao Tzu and the Buddha, so do we remember and emulate the prophetic words and deeds of people like Mahatma Gandhi, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Václav Havel, or Aung San Suu Kyi. Our own prophets include abolitionists like Theodore Parker, suffragettes like Susan B. Anthony, social reformers like Clara Barton, women's rights pioneers like Margaret Sanger, civil liberties pioneers like Clarence Darrow, pacifists like John Haynes Holmes, civil rights martyrs like James Reeb and Viola Luzzo. These were courageous people who not only risked censure, shunning, and even their lives for daring to expose systematic injustice and institutional oppression. So our prophetic role models are not just religious or political figures. They are also poets, writers, activists, journalists, social critics, scientists, singers, even comedians. There are people like African-American poet and Unitarian Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who wrote this poem in 1854. "Make me a grave where you will, in a lowly plain or a lofty hill. Make it among earth's humblest graves, but not in a land where men are slaves. I could not rest if around my grave I heard the steps of a trembling slave. His shadow above my silent tomb would make it a place of fearful gloom. I'd shudder and start if I heard the bay of bloodhounds seizing their human prey, and I heard the captive plead in vain as they bound afresh his galling chain. If I saw young girls from their mother's arms bartered and sold for their youthful charms, my eye would flash with a mournful flame, my death-pale cheek grow red with shame. I would sleep, dear friends, where bloated might can rob no man of his dearest right. My rest shall be calm in any grave where none can call his brother a slave. I ask no monument proud and high to arrest the gaze of passers-by. All that my yearning spirit craves is bury me not in a land of slaves. They are people like journalist Edward R. Murrow, who said the following about television to a group of journalists in 1958. Our history will be what we make of it. We are currently wealthy, fat, comfortable, and complacent. We have a built-in allergy to unpleasant or disturbing information. Our mass media reflect this. But unless we get off our fat surpluses and recognize that television in the main is being used to distract, delude, amuse, and insulate us, then television and those who finance it, those who look at it, and those who work at it may see a totally different picture too late. They are research scientists like James Hansen, who has been issuing warnings about anthropogenic climate change since the early 1980s. Or there are people like the late comedian and social critic George Carlin, who at his last show on HBO in 2008, talked about the real owners of this country, wealthy business interests, and said the following: they own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They have long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, and city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies. So they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interests. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers, people who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly, and pardon me, shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now, they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I ain't in it. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. That's what the owners count on, because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe in it. Carlin also said in the 1990s, in America, anyone can be president. That's the problem. and prophets call on people to engage in faithful resistance, to confront the principalities, powers, and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. They challenge people to bridge the gap between aspiration and reality, to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Now, that's something that Unitarian Universalists understand and resonate with a lot. We call ourselves a religion of deeds, not creeds. We resonate with UU theologian James Luther Adams' description of Unitarian Universalism as the priesthood and prophethood of all believers. In other words, it's up to each and every one of us to fulfill the covenantal obligation of a prophetic church, not just up to ordained clergy. But what does it mean to be a prophetic congregation? In her essay on prophetic UU congregations that I read from earlier, the Reverend Meg Riley helpfully provides 3 essential characteristics. First, she writes, prophetic UU congregations draw from the deepest parts of Unitarian Universalist theology, committing themselves to the wisdom of those theologies. That is, congregations are fully committed to exploring and engaging with our deeply incarnational theology, which is based in earthly, this world, daily engagement with the holy. Rather than speculate on what happens to us after death, we choose instead to focus on what happens to us before death, striving to create together what is holy right here in this incomprehensibly beautiful, horrifically broken, frighteningly vulnerable, miraculous place we call home. Second, prophetic congregations, she says, embody radical caring. Radical in the sense of the very roots of the place, its central mission. They are places where people come into genuine, full-spirited, embodied contact with one another and develop real relationships. What does she mean by that? What does she mean by real relationships? Real relationships mean those that go beyond superficial or serial socializing, that in turn lead us to build authentic community. It means we commit to learning about the complexities of each other's lives, to offer genuine mutuality to all who walk through our doors. Third, she writes, while drawing on our past and on caring in the present, prophetic congregations orient themselves squarely toward the future. In other words, she's saying prophetic congregations are communities of hope. They see through the lens of hope, not hope born from Panglossian optimism or from ignoring suffering and oppression, but hope as a realistic and resilient response to the whole, a commitment to action. To again quote Reverend Riley, our congregations must be places where hope is understood as an existential choice, cultivated as a spiritual discipline, and offered through concrete forms of action. Prophetic congregations put forward multiple opportunities for existential hope to emerge from joint action, people bearing together what we cannot bear alone. It is choosing to act in service of a better future. So the work that is necessary to create and sustain a prophetic congregation is not easy. It's never easy. We will continually fall short, failing our purpose and one another multiple times. Yet, unless we strive to live up to our ideals, to put our faith into action, complete failure is guaranteed. I cast my lot with Unitarian Universalism, not just because it is where I felt called to be. I chose to be a part of this faith because while decades of interfaith work have shown me that we don't own the religious landscape on being prophetic, Unitarian Universalist congregations are still some of the most creative and potentially powerful institutions in our nation. And I stayed to do this work because I wanted to be part of a faith that not only dares to dream big, but also is willing to risk for those dreams and to put those dreams, however incompletely realized, into action. That is not just willing to talk about it, but actually do something. That's what our faith and this time asks of us. You see, it is not easy to be a Unitarian Universalist. It is downright scary. Because this is a risky religion. Because it asks something of you. It asks each of you and me to make a commitment. And it asks us, as the poet asked, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? So, my friends, as we begin this new year together, you've already heard those announcements. Don't treat them as announcements, please. Announcements about the bystander training that's going to be happening next Saturday at 1 p.m. right here. Announcement about the Social Justice Summit that's going to be happening on January 14th, all day. Or the announcement that I'm going to give about a season of resistance and love, an interfaith service that I'm going to be joining area clergy on January 8th at 4 p.m. at Michigan Park Christian Church in Washington, D.C. These are not just announcements, but calls to action, to make a commitment. You know, as I've gotten older, I've moved away from making resolutions, and I've tended to make some commitments because I never keep resolutions. I'm sure you do. I don't. I'm not good at those. But commitments, I have learned to really challenge myself, to push myself. So I want us to make some commitments this year as a religious community. A commitment to really make the effort, make the time amidst our busy, frazzled lives to action. To be a community of faithful resistors. A community that is willing to witness to love. A community that is willing to be a sanctuary in so many ways, be it a physical sanctuary for those whose lives are being threatened, or a spiritual sanctuary for those whose rights, privileges, and freedoms are being threatened, or spiritual companions to faith communities that are being scrutinized and oppressed. All those ways, we are being called to be witnesses and to really stand up where it will be counted. Because despite all the travail and despair that surrounds us, as I look toward the future, I do see something new and exciting being born. I see a determined and hopeful spirit stirring in this church community and in our faith tradition. We are making a new beginning, and that new beginning is near. A beginning that will move us beyond passive acceptance and indifference. A beginning in which we will courageously challenge injustice and oppression. A beginning in which we will faithfully resist any attempt to curtail our freedom or our rights and rise to work with all who seek justice, equity, and peace. The beginning is truly near. And may we have the courage, the commitment, the conviction, the compassion, and the chutzpah to make that beginning and that journey together. That is our calling. That is our prophetic imperative in this new year. And to that I say, Amen. The purpose of a liberal religious community such as ours is to encourage all who gather to be more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring human beings closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. In that spirit, we now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support the self-supporting congregation and its prophetic ministry, and also the prophetic ministry of Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The morning's offering will now be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship.
With gratitude for the gifts we have received, for the gifts that we are, and for the compassion and love made manifest by these gestures of faith, may we be grateful. Please rise in body and/or in spirit to sing the ceaseless flow of endless time, number 350 in the great hymnal.
Please remain as you are, and as the Spirit moves you, or you feel comfortable, hold the hand of your neighbor or bump elbows. Our closing words are from W.E.B. Du Bois. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Today is the seed time, now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime. Go in peace. Go making peace. Live gently, love mightily, and bow to the mystery. Please be seated for the postlude.